Welcome, nutritionradio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, a university nutrition professor of over 20 years, senior scientist, and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. This is its sister show and covers just nutrition from a variety of angles. Come on in for your brief weekly dose of commentary, critique, and probably a comedic touch when we have co-hosts. Let's see what's on tap this time. Wednesday, weight management tips. Okay, a little bit different topic today. Instead of news, we've got tips. So let's start with this one. It may be one that you've tried before or already know, but it's something that I've been reintroduced to lately. It's about protein. So a lot of people I know, they underconsume protein. Not necessarily weightlifters, but my parents, for example, I'm always pushing protein on them and that sort of thing. What's advantageous when it comes to weight management about protein is it's good for both gain and loss. So eating up to, let's say, 1 gram per pound, which is surplus, but not unreasonably so. It's helpful for weight gain because it's building blocks when you're also eating lots of calories. And then for weight loss, because when you're on a hypocaloric, when you're on a low energy diet, your protein needs go up. And that was teased out decades ago in the 70s and 80s and even 90s. Gail Butterfield and Peter Lemon, who was my advisor, and some of the people who really helped describe and help us better understand that there's a trade-off between calories and protein. But anyway, it's good in either case. So getting more of it or finding ways to use it in different ways can be handy for some people, and that's what this is about. You probably already know that dairy proteins, in particular whey, I mean, casein's very high-quality protein too, but whey protein is as good as it gets when it comes to protein quality scores. It's not just as simple as complete or incomplete proteins. For example, animal proteins, certainly the dairy proteins are complete. That is compared to plant proteins, which tend to be incomplete and are missing one or more of the indispensable amino acids, or essential amino acids. But they also rank very highly on these protein quality scales like the PDCAS or the DIAS. The most modern of these scales is the DIAS, or the Digestible Indispensable Amino Acid Score. And without getting into the weeds, without putting a ceiling on quality, it really shows that whey is quite a bit better than soy, for example. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole either. I am disturbed a little bit by a lot of the trends. Just a side rant, I suppose, is a lot of this plant-based diet people they're so into plant-based diets that you'll even see on labels, they'll get really excited about, it has plant-based proteins. And I always scratch my chin and think, that bad, huh? Because usually with plant proteins, you have to eat more because they're not as digestible, and you have to eat a larger variety because of their gaps in their amino acids in their profile. So you have to consume larger variety as well. But what I want to focus on today is the application of whey protein. In particular, I recently bought some unflavored whey protein. I buy the Now brand, but there are, of course, many good quality types of protein. Whey isolates, if you don't overdo it, and here's sort of a mistake number one people make when they try protein in ingredients, is they overdo it. So I would recommend, if you want to experiment with this, you can put 5 or 10 grams of whey isolate in savory foods. It doesn't have to be sweet foods. It doesn't have to be a shake, for goodness sake, or something with fruit in it, or whatever it might be. You can do things like we have here in tip number 1. Savory foods, biscuits, soup, even coffee. So tip number 1 is protein powder, especially whey protein, not just for shakes. So experiment with unflavored whey isolate in savory foods, biscuits, soups, even coffee. Now, I would be careful with the coffee. This might be more of a 5-gram practice run out of the gate. Or maybe you do your protein coffee, or a friend of mine calls it Proffee. You do that as sort of a utility thing, and then you really enjoy the coffee, because I don't want my black coffee messed around with too much. But that sort of makes the point that this isolate of whey protein, oftentimes it doesn't make it milky like casein does. And so you might not be aware of that, but maybe you are. Now you are. That you could put 5 or 10 grams in something that is a clear liquid, and it stays fairly clear. So that's what we're talking about this time around, is how we can use protein, sneak them into the diet for weight management purposes, either gain or loss, in a clever way. See what I did there? Man, there's so many bad whey puns. Anyway, so yes, I'm interested in using these whey isolates in savory foods, powdered soups. You might even try like ramen or something like that. This is sort of taking a lesson I learned years ago and taking it even further. That lesson was, if you want to buy protein, just get vanilla. Get something kind of generic and middle of the road, because you can flavor it with chocolate. You don't have to go buy chocolate protein. You can just get vanilla and put some dark cocoa powder in it, right? And make some really extra high cacao content, super healthy kind of chocolate shake if you want. You don't have to go get something like, I don't know, strawberry banana or orange coconut or some wild flavor, because it's just going to get old. It's going to get old pretty fast. So I learned a long time ago, when you buy protein, just get some vanilla. And this takes it even further to unflavored, so you can put it in savory foods and not make them sweet. But that brings us to our second tip here, and that is tip number 2, the caffeine snooze. So if you're healthy, I would consider something like this. Again, it's not for everyone, but if you're healthy, consider setting an alarm 30 minutes early and taking just half a caffeine tablet. Then go back to sleep. That way, 30 minutes later, when the timer or your official alarm goes off, your eyes are boink wide open, and people who have a hard time lifting in the morning, or they can't get up and go do their cardio or whatever it is, suddenly you can. So you have to think about the trade-offs here, right? I know this sounds a little extreme to some people. This may sound very mild to some of you, but the idea here is that if it helps with compliance and you can get out there and do your cardio. I was a fan of just, getting out there and going for brisk walk, hike types things before breakfast. Nothing real intense, but direct fat oxidation. I know there's a lot of debate over what I call the rabbit versus the hare approach to fat loss. I think they both work, and again, when you're doing something like this, it just helps you stay compliant. And that's the name of the game when it comes to making progress. If you want to do something very quickly, let's say over just a 3 or 4 month period, right? Something you can notice, you have to be compliant. My personal approach with this is that after I do this, and I do this, I've done it for years. I don't do it every morning, of course, and I don't want to be completely caffeine addicted as much as I love coffee and that sort of thing. But I'll actually brew half calf. Chock Full of Nuts, for example, is a brand. They make really good half calf coffee. You could also make brewed coffee and do it 50-50 with decaf, whatever you want to do. And what I feel like I'm doing then is I'm just sort of auto-correcting back to not becoming so wired that it bites me in the butt later. What's clever about this whole trick, of course, is that it gets around the 20 or 30-minute sipping period to actually ingest coffee. Most people don't guzzle coffee, especially hot coffee. I wouldn't recommend it. But this is instantaneous. So you bite a pill in half. If you really want to try to increase the absorption speed, I suppose you could even try to chew it a few times and swish it down with whatever you have by your bedstand. But it's that instantaneous kind of dosing. Now, don't get me wrong. When you consume coffee, the pharmacokinetics are a little bit different. But the cleverness here is that you can just barely wake up. Your eyes are half awake. You take your half a tablet here, and then you just go right back to sleep for another half an hour. Coffee usually gets in your system almost immediately. With a pill, you're probably talking about an hour to really maximize the effect as far as alertness and all that kind of thing. But I would say set an alarm for 20 or 30 minutes later. And experience shows, again, people are different. And I'm not recommending anybody do this. I'm just bringing this up. It's an interesting tip for someone to consider, talk to your doctor, etc. But 20 to 30 minutes, and it really should be in your bloodstream by then and help you actually get your butt out of bed. The tangent I've seen with this is something that my brother actually used to do, which was the afternoon caffeine nap. So when he was real tired, he would take part of a caffeine pill and then go to sleep. And then, they say that naps should really be about 20 minutes. If you sleep for hours in the afternoon, it could screw with your light-dark cycle and all that sort of thing and your sleep architecture. So he would do this and then just take that power nap, and 20 minutes later, boink, he's wide awake, and then he could go to the gym in the afternoon. So that the early afternoon version of this could be okay for, I think, for those of you, again, talk with your doctor or whatever, but to help you get that extra energy to get to the gym. So those are our tips for this week. We are just about out of time. Again, things just to consider, and we'll see you next time. The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.